Hello, everyone. This is Tom Hackle with 57 Seconds. I'd like to thank you all for joining us on this webinar today. We're going to start things off by taking a trip down memory lane. Wouldn't it be great to have a prospect like this today? I mean, everything seems to be in perfect order. The amount of information on his desk is reasonable, and it flows in and out in an orderly direction. He doesn't have voicemail, so when his phone rings, he's got to answer it because he'll never know what he missed if he doesn't. And we all know that these days are gone and that the new prospect is far more complex. He has over 40 hours of work on his desk on any given day. He gets dozens of calls that he can't handle, so he sends them to voicemail to be processed later. He fights through the spam of his email, and he ends up with about 60 meaningful emails a day, but he's only taking 2.7 seconds to decide if he's going to read them, forward them, or delete them. And this new prospect has access to multiple social channels now, and he's checking his smartphone 150 times a day. And meetings are coming at him in different forms, so that he has more meetings and more people are getting to him. And then he gets hit with between 600 and 700 marketing messages per day. So the bottom line is that he is swimming in information, and this information is coming from him from all directions. So your message has to win in this environment because your prospect has only so much brain to hold this information that's coming at him. And just like the sponge that's floating in this bucket of water, it can't hold all of this water. Your prospect's brain can't hold all of the information. And so also like the sponge, when it comes time to go to work, you wring the excess water out. And we want to make sure that your information stays in your prospect's brain long enough to get you to the next cycle in your sales cycle. So I'm going to show you what's working today to engage the new prospect, to educate him in his own language, and to get him to take action. We call this new medium hyper-personalized messaging, and I'm going to play a sample of it for you now. Hello, Logan. Let me congratulate you on your Series B funding. That must be very exciting for your company. My name is Charles Johnson with TechLink One, and I work with national accounts in the food service industry, and I create in-store messaging, vehicles that increase sales and brand awareness. And I'd like to pitch an idea based on a Coca-Cola Boost Zones program that increased their sales by 14%. And I think this program has a very strong correlation to how the Belly Card program interacts with people in these retail spaces. And basically what we did was we created a series of displays that permanently branded Coca-Cola, but also provided a very functional, inexpensive way for the restaurant operator to display daily or weekly messages. And how this might look for Belly Card, and forgive me, I've stolen your collateral, but you could put your permanent brand and message here. We could create a lens to support the paper insert, and to take it a little further, you could provide paper templates that show a seasonal or promotional message, allowing space for the restaurant operator for their message. And when it all comes together, it's a very functional sign that has people come in and interact with your brand and the special that Belly Card provides on a day-to-day basis. This idea can be executed in a number of formats, whether it's a freestanding display on the counter, a menu board. We can add some functionality that's very useful to the restaurant operators. But basically, we're looking for the ideal way to interact with customers about the Belly Card program on a day-to-day basis. So, Logan, thank you for listening. I'd like to put together some numbers for you and so you can evaluate the cost and also some strategies that have worked in the past that may be translated into a Belly Card program. Talk to you soon. Give me a call if you have any questions in the meantime. Thank you. Now that's an example of a real message that went to a cold prospect. The salesman watched the message bounce around within the organization a few times. Before he got a chance to follow up by phone, the client called him and they were off to the races with the project. So let's back up and take a look under the hood of hyper-personalized messaging. There are three components to this message. The first and the absolute foundation to hyper-personalization is the script. 57 seconds symbolizes the need to be brief, to the point, and persuasive with today's prospect. And our script developer walks you through a process of questions and exercises that translate your offer into the recipient's language. The entire process is driven by our EEA methodology. Your message has to first engage, and then it has to educate in your audience's language, and then ultimately compel someone to take an action. And we use a widely accepted model in advertising to demonstrate the path of EEA, and it's called the Elaboration Likelihood Model, or otherwise known as the ELM. This theory identifies two paths of communications that can be persuasive: the central route and the peripheral route. The central route is strong and the peripheral route is weak. And the interesting thing about this model is that the weaker route is very important to our efforts. The stronger central route creates an audience with a high focus on your message. They have deeper thoughts about the attributes and the consequences of your message, and this results in a lasting change that resists counterattacks. So let's say you really wanted a new car and you've been thinking about it, and you see an advertisement on television about that car. Because you really want the car, you're highly involved with the message. Now, the weaker peripheral route of persuasion is a mental shortcut. It uses external cues when the audience isn't quite ready to identify with your message. And the cues can be anything. It can be open questions, personalization, insights that identify a pain point for them, a story. There are a number of ways to persuade on this route. But the downside with staying on this route is that the audience has a very low focus on your message with shallow thoughts about the attributes and the consequences, and this results in a temporary change, and it's very susceptible to counterattacks. So our jobs would be a whole lot easier if we could start on the central route and drive the message all the way through to the strong persuasion outcome. But we don't have that luxury in most cases. People aren't sitting around thinking about your product or your solution. So we have to create an engagement starting with the weaker route of persuasion. And this is why developing your script with EEA methodology is so important. With a prospect message, you have about 60 to 90 seconds at most to raise your message from that weaker peripheral route to the strong persuasion outcome. The engagement part of your EEA message has to start on this peripheral route, and it uses your educational information that's scripted in your prospect's language, like the what's in it for me, pain points, comparisons, to raise your message to the central route so that your call to action can fall into this strong persuasion zone. And the call to action is so important. Without basic instructions on what to do next, very few people take any action at all, even when the stakes are high. The 57-second script developer takes you through the process, again, of questions and exercises, and the goal is to extract your industry expertise and insights about your prospects. And then from there, it takes you through a process where you refine this targeted information into a very powerful script that speaks your prospect's language. And then it's also going to open up the way that you think about your business. So you now have the words that translate your business solution into what's important to your prospect. So it's time to start using images to speed up your prospect's processing of your script. It's going to get your script trusted more. It's going to make a deeper emotional connection and speak to the part of the brain that's responsible for taking action. I can't emphasize enough that the script is the guiding force. It's the navigator of the hyper-personalized message. But images are so crucial to communicating these days. According to the widely accepted research from UCLA psychologist Albert Mehrabian, he demonstrates that 93% of communication is nonverbal. Research out of the 3M Corporation proves that the brain uses both sides simultaneously to process images, 60,000 times faster than when you're reading text. While language is decoding in a linear, sequential manner, it takes more time to process. Let me give you an example. If I'm trying to persuade you to purchase a coffee pot, and I describe it in writing, you would love this retro coffee pot. It has a red body with an octagonal shape. The top section of the coffee pot tapers down to the middle and flares out again from the middle to the bottom base. The top knob and coffee pot handle are black, and this is going to look great in your kitchen. Opposed to me showing you a picture of the coffee pot where your mind processes the look immediately and starts to transition into the emotional part of the consideration. I love it. Oh, I hate it. Mom's going to think this is a great find. Researchers at the Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand showed that statements are more credible when they're accompanied by photos. And as an example, if I make the statement, hippos can't taste their food, researchers found that it's more credible when I add a photo of a hippo when I'm making this statement. And for the record, I have no idea if hippos can taste their food. It's just an example. I'm not suggesting that you mislead with this technique. I am suggesting that you use images to make your true statements more credible. The right images can make a deep emotional connection with your audience. As an example, if I'm raising money to feed starving children in Africa, this donation can gives you a connection to the donation, but it doesn't connect you to the reason why you should donate. If I show you an image of the conditions in Africa, you can compare this with what's going on in your life and make an emotional connection. So there's so much research out there about the impact of images and how we process and connect with images. The benefits of using images are so positive that we're now talking about visual language as a primary form to communicate. But before I move on, I want to leave you with one more reason why images are so important to our communications. The part of the brain responsible for taking actions respond to visual information best. It's the best way to get a message to this part of the brain. It's through imagery. So now that you have the script talking about what's important to your prospects and images that supercharge this message, the final component of your hyper-personalized message is your voice. Greg Stevens and two other researchers from Princeton University detail an experiment that found that as someone is listening to someone else talk, the brain patterns of the two people mirror each other. So your brain waves synchronize with the speaker. Stephen and his group also found that the parts of the brain responsible for social interaction were also synced during the speaker-listener process. Adding your voice to images is so crucial for retention. The picture superiority effect states that only 10% of information is retained after 72 hours when spoken only. When you add your voice to an image, the retention rate skyrockets over 600%. Two guys from the University of Georgia, Stephen Smith and David Schaefer, conducted an interesting study about persuasion and how fast you talk. Conversational speech ranges from 144 words per minute to 214 words per minute. They found that when trying to reinforce someone's opinion, it's more persuasive to talk slower. When you're trying to change an opinion, it's more persuasive to talk faster. So just like the script and the use of images, your voice is a very influential tool. The hyper-personalized message packs a wallop when all three components are pulled together. Now it's time to show you our favorite platform to easily create these types of messages and track their success. Point Across.